What's up, everyone? I'm Josh Pinker, and welcome to another episode of Let's Get Animated. It's December, and Christmas is right around the corner, so I thought for this tutorial we'd have a more festive theme. Together, we are going to be animating this fun little elf dreaming of a present. In this video, I'm going to be working off of my brand new Wacom One Touch 13-inch display. Shout out to Wacom for sending me this so I can use it during my videos. Also, a big thank you to Wacom for sponsoring this video. I'm super excited to get started, so let's dive in. Alright, so this is the file that we're going to be working with today. And if you want to follow along, I'm going to provide a link at the bottom of the YouTube video, and you can use that link to download this exact file so you can follow along with me. So let's look at what we got going on here. So we have our little elf guy here that I drew. And we have our thought bubbles, and we have the big present in the thought bubble, and we have this Christmas themed background here. If we look at our node view here, so this is our elf, and he's locked, so he's just a nice simple drawing. If I unclick, so no legs, just upper body, just a nice flat illustration that I did. And the clouds are separated, so we can see that we have the small cloud, the medium cloud, we have our gift, and we have the large cloud. This is our background, and we just have a plain white color card in the back. So those are all our elements that we have to work with, so nothing too complicated. And we could see the exact things that I went over in the node view. We have it here on our timeline. We have our little elf guy here, and what's happening is he's thinking of a present. Probably a present he's gonna make in Santa's workshop for a kid that's been good all year. So what we're gonna be animating are the thought bubbles popping up and revealing this present. So really simple, but again, learning these simple things helps you in the long run when doing more advanced stuff. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the gift and the large bubble. So the gift is here, it's its own thing. And our large cloud, it's its own thing, it's separated. So we want to make sure that when the big cloud and the present, when they're like growing and popping on screen, that it's happening together at the same time. So instead of doing something like this, I'm going to have like the large cloud, and I'm going to put a keyframe, and I'm going to make this keyframe like really small. And then instead of doing the same thing where now the present, I'm going to go and I'm going to make the present really small and then big. You don't want to do that. You don't want to double up your animation because it's going to take too much time. So I'm just going to undo all that. So instead, we're going to do very, very basic rigging. And all we're going to do is I'm going to do Control P. And that's going to make a peg. And I'm going to, from the bottom here, I'm going to connect to the gift. And I'm going to connect here to the large cloud. And that right there is rigging. That is basic rigging. And all you're basically saying is, I want the large cloud and I want the gift. I want them to be connected together. So now when I do all my animation on the master peg here, it's going to affect both the cloud, the thought bubble cloud, and the present together. I'm going to rename this. So I'm going to do cloud and present. Close that. And I want to make sure the pivot point is right in the middle. So I'm going to go to my rotation tool and I'm just going to click and drag this right to the middle. Cool. And that's pretty it. And you could see in our timeline, so now we have large cloud, gift, cloud, and present. I'm just going to collapse that folder and make a keyframe here. So now I'm just going to be animating on this top peg, this layer, so that everything now moves together and I'm not animating the cloud separately or the present separately. All right, so let's think about the timing for these clouds here. So I'm just going to put we have our keyframe there. I'm going to put a keyframe right here. And we know that we want to go from small to big. So I'm going to put keyframe here. We had our first keyframe here. So this keyframe on frame 9, this is going to be the size that it is. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to make this really nice and tiny. So it's going to start off that small and then it's going to grow to that big. And now that I have my first pose, the small keyframe, to the big one, I'm going to go and I'm going to go right here to this button, set motion keyframes, which is basically setting a tween. So I'm going to click this and now we have our tween set and now it's automatically animating the bubble cloud going from small to big automatically. You're basically saying, hey Toon Boom, I'm going from here to here. Please fill in all the in-between animation of growing. So we have that. Now, I always feel like, you know, this is kind of very basic level where someone will just go here and it just grows. But we want to think of more like cartoony style. We don't just want it like growing from like start to finish. We want to add a little bit more flair to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bounce to the animation. So have a little overshoot and settle. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a keyframe a few frames after. So this frame and this frame are now the exact same. What I'm going to do is I want to grow this a little bit more. So I'm going to have it go a little bit more. And then I'm going to set my tween. And now we can see that it goes from here and it goes back to getting small. So now we have that nice little bounce. As opposed to just stopping right here, it goes overshoot and then settles back. So we get a nice little bounce. And that helps with just getting a little bit more of a cartoony feel to it. And it doesn't feel very stiff with just start, stop. You have a little overshoot settle. And we could go a little bit more too. I'm just going to push it a little bit more. All right, so now that we have that, we can do the exact same thing on the medium cloud. So I'm going to set a keyframe, set a keyframe. We know that this keyframe, it needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make it bigger. And this is going to be our finishing. And this one needs to be nice and tiny. So I'm just going to size this down to about there. And I'm going to set my tween. So we got it there. So now both are growing at the same time. Small, really big, and settling down. And now for this one over here, same thing. I'm gonna put keyframe here, and I'm clicking F6 to put the keyframe. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and then it settles, and I'm gonna make this nice and tiny. And I'm going to click to set my tween. There we go. But notice how everything is happening at the same exact time. So we know that all our timing is the same, so we're happy with that. But we want to offset this. We want this to be number 1, then this goes after this is done, and then this is the last one. So all we're going to do is, we have all this space to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this first one. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to drag this to over here. And now we can see that there's no first one here because there's nothing happening. I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to move it down to about here. And I'm going to highlight, drag this, and same amount, probably like right here. So we can see that I offset it. So this is the small cloud. So from frame 11 all the way to like 23, that's when it's going to start animating. But since this is the first frame, there's going to be nothing happening here because we can see that the exposure, so there's nothing on screen because there's no exposure of the little cloud. But then right when we get here, that's when it starts to appear. The exposure starts on frame 11 and we have the animation of our peg happening right here. And because this is happening here and we offset everything down the timeline, it's not going to show up on screen. So now just dragging and scrubbing through. So we have this going, bloop. We have this growing, and finally our present. And what's kind of nice is you can play around with the timing. If you want it to be a lot faster, you would just do less frames. So I'm just going to click and drag this down. So now it's going to be a lot faster because there's less frames. If you want this to be longer, we're just going to drag this down even more. And now it's going to grow at a smaller pace. So you can feel free to play around with your timing if you want it to be really fast, really slow. It's just about the amount of frames that you have. And it's always nice to, you know, not have things start right at frame 1. We want to think of this is a video, so we want there to be the beginning, just some buffer of just seeing just the elf, seeing a nice blank background, and then animation starting. And there we have it. So that's really, really simple way to just animate thought bubbles. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Another thing that we can do just to improve the quality of what's going on is we can add a camera and we can animate the camera and have it just be a little bit even more interactive. So I'm going to zoom out here, and all I'm going to do is add a layer, and I'm going to go to camera. So we have the camera here, and I want to make a peg. So with the camera selected, I'm just going to go Command P. So now we have the peg connected to the camera. And what we can do is I'm going to make a keyframe right here on frame 1. And I'm just going to go over to frame 9 and I'm going to make another keyframe. So now we have 2 keyframes, and on the first keyframe, I'm going to go to scale. So I'm going to click scale, and we're going to see this box. And with holding down the shift button, I'm going to go to the edge here, and I'm going to click and drag. So if I drag outwards, we can see the camera zooming out. So we're going farther away. So I'm going to go, still holding down shift, I'm going to go a little bit closer in. And I'm going to go to this button, the translate. I'm going to click on that. And the green is to go up and down. And the red over here is to go left and right. So I'm going to go over here, center on our character. Let's get him right nice in the middle. So now let's zoom out a little bit more. I want to just get him nicely into the frame. Okay, perfect. So he's in the middle of our frame. I'm going to click back to our transform tool. So we can see on frame 1, we zoomed in nice and closely. And on frame 9, if I go over here, we zoom out all the way. And the same exact way that we kind of went small to big on our clouds here, I'm going to do the same thing from our camera. So from here to here, I'm going to go and I'm going to set motion keyframe. And now we can see the camera zooming out and getting us right to our original spot where we're nice and zoomed out. Same kind of thing. The shorter amount of frames, the faster it's going to play. It's going to be very fast. If we want it to go a little bit longer, then we want to just drag frames out. So now we have it zooming out and then growing, and our final box here. So this is how a nice way, you know, we started with just like this straight on and seeing the animation happening, but to up the quality of the video, of the animation, you know, thinking of this as a film, throwing in little tricks like this of having the camera starting really close and then zooming out, and then we have our animation being revealed. These are just really nice ways of just thinking of being a creator and making simple animation look even better with having a camera thrown in, thinking of that overshoot and settle of the clouds, and also making sure that we're working smarter, not harder, by connecting our gift and our large cloud together, so we're not animating two things separately. We're able to animate them together. Like I said, you can go in and you can adjust the frames so it goes a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. If you want this to take even longer, you can just click on here and you can drag this out so it can add even more frames, so your video is going to be even longer. As well as thinking about, you know, you can export this video, bring it into a program like Adobe Premiere and add some Christmas music and things like that to even make the final video even more festive and fun. And that's probably something I'm going to do right after this. I really hope this video was nice and simple. I hope you were able to follow along. If you missed any steps, feel free to, you know, rewatch, click back a few seconds. With this tutorial, I just wanted to show how you can get the exact idea that you want done very simply. A lot of people think of animation and Toon Boom to be very complex. So I really hope that this helps show how you can do a very fun, simple movement action with just very simple clicks and commands.